Hello everybody, my name is Sophia Porter, and you are listening to You Got, Sophia's Game of Thrones podcast. Today we come together to speak of the heartbreaking episode, Sons of the Harpy, and my guest is one you all probably know very well. Normally I wouldn't have him on again so soon, but given the fact that his favorite character, his number one, was brutally cut down on Sunday night, I felt it completely necessary. So hi Kyle, and welcome back, although I wish it were under much happier circumstances.
Sophia, my heart hurts. It hurts so badly.
I'm sure it does.
I'm in mourning. I can't even muster up the energy to make what my normal intro would be, which is I am the Cooper to your Darnell as we travel into the door.
Oh my god.
So, all I'm doing is mourning the great Sir Barristan the Bold.
And I am too, honestly. It's been 24 hours and I'm still just heartbroken. I'm still reeling. I was venting to all my friends and to my boss today about it. I was like, how dare they kill a man like him? How dare they? And all that kind of stuff. So we're in the same boat, although I'm sure you're feeling it even more as he was, as I said before, your favorite character. I can't even, yeah.
Well, sorry, this is the first time, as you pointed out, that, because I just caught up on the books between these last two seasons. Like, before
right.
this is the first season that I'm watching, having been a current book reader. And so this is the first time that I lost a character that I wasn't expecting to lose, and it really hurt.
Oh,
it really hurt.
Absolutely. It's a terrible club to be a part of.
Yeah. Do we get hats to jackets?
I can see about that. Given the fact that it's gonna happen even more, I feel like we should at least have something.
There'll be hats with George R.R. Martin's face on them, and then like X'd out.
Personally victimized by Game of Thrones.
This wasn't his fault.
It wasn't.
We can't blame him for this.
It wasn't. And you know what? We're going to get in a lot more to Jorah. Well, him too, actually. But to Barristan as this episode goes on. But I just, as a, a normal thing on the podcast, we've got to get it a little normalcy, right? We got to get a little normalcy under our feet. So I have a few questions today. They're for you, of course, as I always do. They're rather straightforward, and they're sort of a way in which I can gauge your mental state, as I was very worried about you at the end of this episode.
Yeah.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how heartbroken are you?
12.
Jeez.
Next.
Yeah, that's essentially what I assumed. Okay, next. Given the fact that now 2 of your top 25 characters have been knocked down, are you worried about anyone on the rest of your list?
I mean, everyone. Like, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if Tormund Giantsbane met his end next week. Just to really break my heart. Honestly,
I'm hoping that won't happen. I really am. But you never know. Honestly, we haven't seen the wildlings in a while, so I'm hoping we at least see them next week. It would be nice, Yeah,
I would think so. Especially when Stannis leaves for Winterfell. I think
right.
The wildlings, because Jon Snow's, as he made clear this week, is staying right where he is.
He's not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere. Not even Melisandre's feminine wiles can attract him away.
She can try as hard as she can, but it's not gonna work, lady. Mm-mm.
Yeah, well, it very nearly worked, though.
He was thinking about it. We were all, our breaths, like me and my roommate were watching, and we were just holding our breath. We were just like, oh my god, John, don't do it. Like, don't do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, alright, we'll get to that point, obviously. And let's just talk about the Sons of the Harpy as a whole. Kyle, apart from the whole Barristan dying thing, which we can pretend never happened, I'm perfectly fine pretending it never happened. How did you like the episode? Because I thought that the episodes were getting incrementally better, but this whole death kind of really threw me. And overall, I feel like this episode absolutely had the best scene so far with Stannis and his daughter, but there were aspects of it that felt really rushed to me.
I think this was, putting aside my personal feelings, and I am allegedly a critic, and so I can speak as a critic. I'm going to put the critic hat on. I'm going to take off my Kingsguard helm and put as my critic hat.
As is expected, Yeah.
I thought this was a fantastic episode.
Good.
Like I think there was one very, very bad scene in the middle of this episode. And I'm talking as a critic now. The Barristan scene was very bad, but for very personal reasons.
Yes, absolutely.
As a critic, I think this scene I agree, the Stannis scene might have been the best of the season. I think this episode also had the worst scene of the season, which I'm sure we'll get to. But overall, I think it was a very strong episode with a lot of meaty things to bite into and a lot of interesting things to unpack.
Yeah.
That set a lot of events in motion. So overall, I'm respectful of the episode. I'll say I enjoyed the episode, even though it broke my heart, and I think it was a great episode of television.
I mean, I will agree that I thought it was great, but there were parts that I definitely thought could have used work, and I felt like were sort of thrown at us, especially the rise of the Faith Militant and the introduction of the Sand Snakes, and plus Davos wasn't in it, so I'm already biased, but we can get to that later. So we'll just.
I mean, Sophia, I just want to bring up the point, like, what if Davos dies? I hate to even bring that up,
Kyle.
But, like, that's a possibility.
It is. I mean, I don't know if you're just feeling it because your favorite character got killed off and now you want me to think about it. Honestly.
I'm trying to hurt you.
You really are. I pray to the gods, to the maker, to the stranger, to whoever is around and writing Game of Thrones, I guess, that they will keep Davos around. Just please, oh dear God, I don't know what I would do.
But there are parallels between Davos and Barristan in that they're two of the very few great men of the world. You know, like purely good dudes.
Absolutely.
Who have good intentions and are practical and give good advice and give practical advice. And they're also characters who, and not spoiling anything, but who had big arcs in the latter books.
Yep.
The books that this season is allegedly based on. And so that's one of the reasons that Barristan's death was so shocking, is that, to me, the reason that I love Barristan is due to events that will not occur in the show because he died before they could occur.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, Davos has this entire storyline, and now with Barristan's death, it's like
anything's possible. Anything is possible. I hope they don't, but he's not. I mean, he's not a fan favorite. I'm particular to him, but those are for personal reasons. It's not because he's a character. He's not a Jaime Lannister, or Tyrion. Like he's not a fan favorite at all. So. Yeah, I'm worried. I would definitely say that this has unsettled me in a way that I did not expect. Well, we're gonna see. We're gonna see. So we can start right off. We'll dive right in. Sons of the Harpy starts off with Jorah brutally stealing a man's boat just so he can take Tyrion to Dany, which is something that practically everyone except Tyrion knew already. And while I can argue that Tyrion's pestering of Jorah was genius, personally, for me, and I don't know how you're going to feel about this, I didn't feel that these scenes were necessarily necessary. Like, granted, seeing Tyrion, for me, it's always a breath of fresh air, but somehow I think the time might have been better suited with, I don't know, Davos, maybe. Maybe I'm just biased, but I don't know. I thought they were a little rushed, and Jorah is just getting worse and worse.
Well, I think you're right in the sense that we all knew that Jorah was going to Dany. And so we didn't need a scene to establish that, right? At the same time, it gave Tyrion a chance to do his Sherlock Holmes routine and figure out who Jorah is based on no information at all.
That was great. I appreciate that.
Right. And it also established that, like you said, Jorah is not in a good place right now. As Tyrion very quickly identifies, this plan is not well thought out. This is Jorah was doing nothing with his life, ogling the Dany costumed person at the bar in Volantis.
Yeah.
Hatches a plan on the spot because he recognizes Tyrion, and now Tyrion has spent 10 seconds thinking about that plan and said, "Oh boy, this is a bad idea, bro."
He's like, "Can I help you? Please let me help you." Yeah. What are you doing with your life, sir? But
there's also, I mean, I hate to bring up Barristan's death more than it needs to be brought up.
I mean, that's what this episode's going to be about. Yeah.
Sure, but Dany just lost her most trusted protector and guard.
Yes.
And she is in dire need of good advice.
Hello, Tyrion.
Hello, Tyrion, and hello, Jorah.
Yeah.
Who, you know, even though he betrayed her, she also knows he loves her.
I mean, he loves her. He loves her. Yeah.
Right. And she, someone who is, even for someone who is hopelessly committed to principles that she herself hasn't even identified, as we saw in this episode. Like Dany, we could talk about Dany's shortcomings as a ruler, but she is very stubborn about being committed to principles that seem to shift every day.
Yes.
And I could see her recognizing that she needs someone like Jorah to protect her now that Barristan's gone, and she needs someone like Tyrion to advise her.
Yeah.
Which she is just a role that she's never filled. And so that scene, this whole Jorah plan is like a bad idea Jane's commercial, but at the same time, it might work due to the events later in this episode.
Yeah, I can agree. To me, it just felt a little expository. I don't know, like it could have been done a little better, and I think that was sort of the way I felt about this episode as a whole, was just there were certain things that could have been, they were good, but they just could have been done a little better. So that's Tyrion and Jorah. We're just coupling them all together today. So next up, we see Jaime staring off at the Sapphire Isle, also known as Tarth. And I thought it was sort of lovely to see him care about anyone else, even if it's not like an outward thing that is said. Like, obviously, Brienne is from Tarth, and Jaime is definitely remembering her, but and so for me, I just thought it was a really nice scene. There wasn't anything said about it. It was just a sort of like the smile that sort of comes on his face is like, oh, all right, he's not inherently evil. Like, you know, there he is. Like,
yeah. Well, Jaime's such a weird character because he's done some really terrible things.
He really has.
I mean, arguably, Jaime's responsible between pushing Bran off the castle.
Yeah, hopefully he won't push Bran off a castle. That would be awful.
It might happen.
Yeah, who knows?
I might have seen that in my flames. But then also the of course horrible scene with Cersei following Joffrey's death.
Yeah, and the breaker of chains. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jaime's arguably responsible for two of the worst things that ever happened on Game of Thrones, which is a long list.
It really is, and he's at the top. He's at the top. I mean, and that's my problem is separating book Jaime from show Jaime, I think.
Right. But, I mean, the thing is, like, he's also this lovable rogue.
Yes.
And you kind of just take him for what he is, which is a complicated guy who's done a lot of bad things, but also he's not the Mountain. You know, he's not just someone who exists to bring misery onto others.
Right.
And so that's the interesting thing. I mean, almost all of Game of Thrones is shades of gray, and that's sort of one of Jaime's one of the most complicated cases of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, you see it again with, you know, him and Bronn talking about Tyrion, and Jaime saying essentially that he would kill Tyrion next time he saw him if he ever sees him again. And I don't know, that to me wasn't very surprising. It didn't take me back because Jaime lets Tyrion out, expecting Tyrion to just leave, and Tyrion goes and murders their father.
Yes, I think that's a reasonable reaction from Jaime's perspective. And I think also, and we saw Jaime sort of pining for his love of Cersei in this episode when he answers he wants to die with the woman he loved.
Yeah.
He's also angry that Tyrion murdering Tywin has driven a wedge between he and Cersei. And this whole Myrcella quest seems like possibly Jaime's, like, love letter to his sister.
Yeah.
That he's doing this as a way, like, when he says, like what do you think? I want your opinion on this. What does he mean when he says it has to be me to rescue Myrcella?
Yeah, you know, I wasn't sure, because part of me thought that, you know, he was going just to get out of King's Landing. But now it sort of seems like he is doing this for Cersei, and I think that this episode solidified that, because he does, like you said before, he does say, I want to die in the arms of the woman I love, and obviously he's not talking about anybody else but Cersei. And so I think this is a way in which he can sort of prove himself, because she does say, you can't do anything. You're crippled. you're pretty much worthless when it comes to fighting, and you're not that smart. So, how does he prove himself? Oh, right, by saving their daughter.
Yeah. Well, Cersei calling Jaime, or thinking that Jaime's not that smart, is the pot calling the kettle black.
Yes.
But, as we saw in this episode, we can definitely get into. But,
Cersei. Oh, God.
I wonder if, by the way, was that like an accidental kettle black reference to the Osmond kettle black?
That was nice, Kyle. Not nerdy at all.
Look, I'm not clever either, okay? I'm just muddling my way through this. But I wonder if Jaime, if this is like a straightforward Knight's Quest, where we sort of take it as face value that Jaime is trying to win back the love of his sister, and is taking Bronn to rescue Myrcella, and they hope to escape and bring Myrcella back to King's Landing, and everyone will live happily ever after. Or if Jaime has an ulterior motive. Mm-hmm. And I think he genuinely wants to get Myrcella back. I think that part is beyond question. He she's his daughter. And, but I wonder if possibly Jaime's sort of waxing poetic about Cersei and death and all of that, if he's planning to offer himself up in what is essentially an exchange of hostages.
Huh.
If the reason Jaime chose Bronn is that Bronn is going to escort Myrcella to King's Landing, and Jaime is going to stay in Dorne, because Jaime doesn't want to provoke a war with Dorne.
Right. And he would, taking Myrcella would do that.
Yeah, it would start a war. So what if he, rather than a Ocean's 11 style heist,
You will reference that movie as much as you can.
Listen, it's my favorite movie, I'm not gonna lie. Rather than planning a heist, if he's going to go up the door on Martell and say, I will be your captive, release Myrcella. And if that's his plan.
That's certainly a hero's journey.
That's my theory.
I like that theory. I agree with it. I don't know how well it would go over. Jaime is the Kingslayer. He would definitely be a better hostage, but not as easily killed.
He would be a better hostage were Tywin in charge. But it's interesting to think, because Cersei loves her children so much and is obviously very alert to the idea of losing them. It's hard to say whether Cersei loves Myrcella or Jaime more.
I believe she loves her children more. Especially with the prophecy and all of that.
Yes. But from Doran's perspective, he knows the rumors about those two. He doesn't know Cersei's current state of mind. Jaime is one of the most famous knights in all of Westeros, for good and for ill.
Right.
It's entirely possible that from the Dornish perspective, Jaime would be a more valuable hostage.
Yeah. Yep.
So, maybe that's Jaime's plan. That's, I'm just throwing it out there.
I know, I'm a fan.
Yeah, what this doesn't seem like to me is that they're gonna go in guns blazing and, chop down 50 guards. Because we saw them have real struggles dealing with a 4-man patrol this episode. I don't know how they're gonna break into the water gardens.
They're not gonna be able to. There's no way. And even though I loved that scene, and with their combined wit, who knows? But it was, we'll see.
I just don't think it's happening. I don't think this is all leading up to some kind of midnight, heist. I think Jaime knows what he has to do and is going to try to accomplish this through diplomatic means as opposed to with the sword.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And we'll continue on with Jaime's story just a little bit, because he's only in, he's got two full scenes in this episode. So he, on the shore of what I can only say is Lake Michigan, because it really, really looked like Lake Michigan. I bet it was somewhere way prettier. But being from Michigan, I can safely say that was. Bronn and Jaime face off with some Dornishmen. And to me, this is just sort of going off of what we've talked about a lot, is the fact that these two have the best chemistry on the show, besides probably Tyrion and Varys. The way in which they sort of just joke back and forth, the part with the sharks, where they think they saw sharks in the water, that was classic. I laughed out loud. I think that they're definitely, the writers have pinned down how to write these two characters and make them interesting. And again, it's we're in a new land, and these people are the ones that we know. So to keep them interesting makes this new land interesting, and I just think they're doing a great job with it. And so then Bronn takes down a few of the Dornishmen, and Jaime learns that he actually can fight with both hands, which was pretty funny. And I'm just thinking we need a spin-off of the two of them. I know that's not really Game of Thrones style, but I don't know. I could...
but that's what Game of Thrones is, right? It's like 20 stories that could all be spin-offs.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved the fight scene. I thought it was beautifully choreographed. I thought their quips were hilarious. Jaime realizing that his hand isn't worthless was great. You know, he's not worthless anymore. He can fight. He can grab swords.
Well, he's pretty worthless. That was a good deal of luck.
Yes.
But it was hilarious.
It was hilarious. And my biggest fear was that Bronn was going to die, because you did tell me that someone was going to die. And I was really worried, because the way they sort of gave him this whole, like, if you could die, how would you die? And, like, all that thing. It was a freaking red herring, but I thought it was going to happen. I thought Bronn was dead for sure. Like, so I'm just really glad he's not.
Well, I think there's a very reasonable chance that Bronn is killed this season.
Yeah.
It just seems like that, again, all those conversations about death and stuff could...
Yeah, I'll come back.
For a variety of reasons. But right now, he is in a very dangerous situation without a lot of backup.
Yeah. No, it's true. He is the backup. Like, he's the front man and the backup. Like,
yes.
Jaime is screwed without Bronn. Yeah. Okay.
Basically, yes.
Yeah. So we'll just stay in Dorne for a second, because it's just easier than going back and forth, and then we'll move on. So we were introduced to the nefarious sand snakes, and I sort of mentioned my thoughts on them earlier, but I'm interested to hear yours, Kyle, because for me, like I said, it all seemed just a little bit rushed. Like, here we've got these really badass women who have been talked about a lot, and they're all fathered by Oberyn Martell, and pretty much they get 4 minutes of screen time, right? Nym barely gets a word in. Tyene is revealed to be Illyria's daughter, which is super different from the books, and Obara declares herself a fighter, but I'm interested to see what, like, the non-book readers thought about them, because it seemed a little bit like, oh god, here are 3 new characters that we have to learn. But for now, Kyle, I guess your opinions will do on them. I'm just interested to know what you think.
This was the scene that I referenced earlier as being, I think, the worst scene of the season.
Yeah.
I am excited about the Sand Snakes, or I was excited about the Sand Snakes until I actually saw them. No disrespect to those actresses, but I thought 2 of them gave the worst performances of the season in their brief scene. I thought... There was some like uncharacteristically bad accent work happening.
Yeah.
I thought the weird launch into a monologue as an answer to a question is the kind of ham-handed thing that Game of Thrones would do in season 1 when it was still sort of figuring itself out.
Right.
But that's almost been stamped out at this point. Like this season, one of the things that's been so good about it is that they've largely avoided these characters speaking like politicians at a debate, and, like answering questions with prepared statements. And that scene was so poorly done and so, like, amateur, and just, like, also, like, the mechanics of, like, so this captain, as Bronn suspected, sold Jaime and Bronn out and tried to go to the Sand Snakes to get, more money to tell them information.
Yeah.
And so they bury him in his head in the sand, and then release scorpions, and then put a bucket on his head. It's like, at what point do people do that in this world? Don't they just kill people?
It's like, oh, hey, wait, Illyria, we did this just for you because we knew you were coming. So we took the time to dig a hole, put him in, cover him back up, put some scorpions in there, make sure he didn't die from the scorpion bites so that Obara could throw her, sword in. Like, it just...
Her spear as a capper to, like, a 6-sentence monologue about how she got her spear in the first place. Like, did they all plan this out? Like, were they, like, scheming for an hour, like, to choreograph this whole thing? It was so dumb.
It really was.
Yeah, it's like what Game of Thrones does so well is tell these human stories, in this crazy fantasy world where it's like, you believe someone like Melisandre can exist even though she has these, like, magic powers.
Yeah.
Because, like, the way she behaves with Jon Snow is so human. And she might have, like, nefarious intentions, and she's clearly a mysterious character, but, like, that interaction between them, you understand, and nothing about the Sand Snake's introduction rang even a little bit true. It just felt honestly like an NBC show.
Yeah. It was the first time I was thrown out of HBO. Absolutely. It was sort of like, oh, wait, what? What am I watching? Like, what am I watching? I'm sorry. Thank God it was only 4 minutes long.
Yeah, exactly. That was a scene out of Revolution. That old NBC show, like, about the apocalypse where everybody had, like, everyone had access to, like, burned out buildings, but also, like, a hair and makeup salon.
You know, that's what's most important in an apocalypse, obviously.
Obviously. But it was like, I don't understand how a show of this quality airs a scene like that. Like, to me, like, if I'm in the edit bay and that scene comes in, then my answer is, I guess the Sand Snakes aren't going to be a character on the show anymore.
Right.
Because they aren't really a character in the book. Like, they exist in the books, but they don't have a story in the books.
Not even a little bit. It's all Ariane Martel.
Right. And so if they are as bad as this scene suggests, then holy cow, that decision to cut Ariane is really looking bad.
Because she was interesting, at least. Like, it was sometimes hard to read her, because it was like you were thrown into this totally new thing with all these new people, but at least she, like, had some substance. Like, these girls, like I said before, like, none of them established a character. All we know is one's got a whip, one is the daughter of Ilaria, and the other one has, a spear.
Right, it reminds me of, on The Walking Dead, the introduction of, oh god, I forgot her name. The katana-wielding lady.
Michonne?
Michonne! Thank goodness you knew that.
I don't even watch that show, so thanks, Tumblr.
I'm so impressed by you right now.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle. Thank you very much.
But they're all these characters who exist to be cool.
Yeah.
And that's something that's beneath Game of Thrones. It's probably right in line with The Walking Dead, but it's beneath Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Like, characters shouldn't exist because they're cool in Game of Thrones. The show is better than that. And so all I can hope is that this was just a bad introduction, but they're going to get a lot more characterization as the season goes on.
I hope so. I mean, I had problems already with them, just from sort of the way I saw them. Like, one of my favorite things about Oberyn is that, I don't know how many, I hope this doesn't piss people off, because I'm not saying it to piss people off, but one of my favorite things about Oberyn was that he slept with everyone, and the Sand Snakes all look different. I'm not making this in a bad way. Like, I'm all for more diversity on a show. Like, hell yeah. But one of the most important things about Oberyn was that he was a lover of everyone, and he slept with everyone. And all of the Sand Snakes, they don't look the same. And none of them are Ilaria's daughter, which is something that's very different in the books. Like, Tyene in the books is blonde-haired and blue-eyed. And like she's totally doesn't belong in Dorne, but she's there. She's Oberyn's daughter. Like, and so for me, it was sort of like, okay, here are these awesome ladies, but they all look like they're Ilaria's daughter and Oberyn's daughter, and they sort of just have no purpose. Like, except for, it's an expository purpose. That's all it is. And if we want more badass female ladies, I'm all for it, but give them something. Like, give them some backstory that's interesting, not just my mother cried and my father put a spear at my feet and I picked the spear.
Yeah, really bad, really bad, and it's a true testament to this episode, to the rest of this episode, that it was so good and compelling that a scene like that can't bring it down. Like,
yeah, for me, it brought it down.
Well, it knocked it down, but to me, like, this was a great episode still, and that's, like, but that's even recognizing how bad this scene was.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, again, like, I loved all the Jon Snow stuff, I loved Jaime and Bronn, it's like, I just go down the list, like, I didn't like what happened to Barristan, but that was an amazing scene.
Yes.
So, it's like, again, Game of Thrones, like, overwhelms you with greatness, even when it really misfires on something.
Absolutely. All right, that's enough negativity, I think.
Absolutely.
Let's move on to King's Landing, because King's Landing had a pretty major sort of few minutes in this episode. I mean, I think it was about 10 minutes we were in King's Landing, which is a pretty long time. So essentially, Cersei sends Mace Tyrell away to Braavos with Meryn Trant, and that just doesn't seem good. That does not bode well for Mace Tyrell. Which also rhymes. Look at me go.
So impressed.
Thank you very much. My hope is that Marin, by Marin going to Bravos, somehow Arya will happen upon him, and he will be brutalized, because he is one of the last 4 names on her list of death.
Yes. I think you've weaved the needle successfully.
Phew. That can be the only thing. And somehow maybe either she saves Mace Tyrell or Mace Tyrell gets hurt and killed. Who knows? But Marin's gonna die. Like, he's not coming back from Bravos.
I don't think so. Well, we gotta talk about Cersei.
Yes.
So this is one thing I'll say about what the season was with Cersei, which is that it's being very subtle about how incompetent she is.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were just judging by her mannerisms and her confidence and her just the sort of way she's like drinking and staring out the window with like a smug look on her face, you would think Cersei is the master conductor of the orchestra.
Yes.
You know? And she clearly thinks she's that. But so she's sending Mace Tyrell off with Meryn Trant to basically be a hostage, from what I gather. Which is that if things go badly with the Tyrells, she's got her man to take Mace hostage.
Yeah.
So they don't march on King's Landing. Like, that's her idea. Is that Mace will, without even knowing it, because he's a big dope.
He's just a drunk buffoon all the time. Yeah.
I love Mace Tyrell.
I do too. I really do too.
Yeah. So he's not going to know he's a hostage. But if things go badly between the Lannisters and the Tyrells, he immediately becomes a hostage with no fight. And now Loras is a hostage, so the Tyrells can't do anything.
Right.
Because, you know, they're 2 of the most important people in their family are held hostage.
That's why Olena's coming back.
Yes. Yes. Thank goodness.
Thank the God. Thank you. We needed her.
Yeah. But then Cersei militarizes the faith because she knows that she has less power than Marjorie now, and
right.
Tommen's eating out of Marjorie's hand, and so Cersei needs a political ally ASAP, and she recognizes that the High Sparrow is someone whose status she can very easily elevate, and who she can flatter with gifts.
Yes.
With, of course, the unspoken idea that she is getting something in return, which is that the High Sparrow will do her bidding, and in this episode he does. You know, she informs him of Sir Loras, and he sends the Faith to arrest Sir Loras.
Yes.
And so she thinks
it's all coming up Cersei. That's what she thinks.
Of Cersei, and she thinks the fact that the High Sparrow is now effectively more powerful than the King is a good thing.
No.
Because the King is under Marjorie's control, and the High Sparrow is under her control.
The thing is, though, Tommen is still somewhat under Cersei's control. I mean, she is his mother, and he's afraid to piss her off. So it's like, yes. At least she had some semblance of control over Tommen. With the High Sparrow, you know it's gonna go south. And yeah, we know, but like by watching the show, you know it's gonna go south. He's going to get drunk with power, and the Faith militant is just going to take over. It already started. You know, I mean, we see it happen. We see Lancel being carved, his forehead being carved with the High Sparrow's sigil, and we see them, you know, disrupting Peter Baelish's brothel. We see it happening, and it's just going to get worse.
Yes, I agree, and I think everyone sees that with Cersei.
Cersei.
I have a question for you.
Yes, I'm ready.
Is the High Sparrow someone who is just very cunning and who plays the game at a higher level than Cersei? And so this whole, like, routine about being, you know, about being this pious guy who wants to uphold the will of the faith, is this all an act? And he is actually as power hungry as Cersei is. He's just more savvy about going after it. Or is he someone who is genuinely committed to his principles and who truly believes that what he's doing, like with the brothels in the city and arresting Sir Loras and all of that, is he someone who truly believes that is the right way to be doing things and is doing this from a position of genuine conviction? And Cersei has just underestimated that conviction.
It's a really good question. And as a book reader, just solely a book reader, I would have said the first. I absolutely think that he is much harder in the books than he is in the show. And maybe it's just like my love for Jonathan Pryce shining through, but I really think that it's the second. I think that he is just completely committed to the faith.
Me too.
and oh, I'm hearing myself in your mic. Okay, and I think so. Me too, and I think that is Cersei's fatal error, is that she assumes that, like her, everybody has an ulterior motive.
Right.
And that he's some kind of, like, she thinks she's negotiating with Littlefinger. You know, someone who she can trade favors with and who, you know, is like, pliable.
Right.
To that kind of bribery.
No.
And what she misunderstands is that when he talks about all sinners are equal, he doesn't just mean Loras. He means someone
Cersei,
who,
too.
oh, I don't know, has 3 incest children.
Yeah, has sex with her brother on a regular basis. Yeah.
Right.
No.
And so Cersei thinks she's insulating herself from, you know, this kind of persecution. But High Sparrow is 100% committed to his ideals.
Yes.
And if she, it doesn't matter how much power she gives him. That's just power that can be turned against her were she to violate his ideals.
Right.
And Cersei is utterly blind to this fact, and I don't think it's going to go well for her.
I really don't. I mean, I really, really don't either. It's going to come back and bite her in the ass. I mean, it has to. She's on her high horse, and thinks she's riding higher, but she literally just sent away her first line of defense. And
Yes.
you know it's just going to get worse from there on out.
And it's all despite Marjorie, which is weird. Like, it's this weirdly narrow view. Like, what is she really trying to do beyond keep herself in a position of power?
Right.
You know, it's like, I guess she fears for her children, and that's always what's driving her. But, my goodness, I mean, if she would just take a step back, the position she's putting, you know, by arresting Sir Loras, even if she wasn't directly, I mean, even if she thinks no one knows that she was directly responsible, which she was.
Obviously she was, right? Like,
Yeah, it's like, who's not going to see through that?
right.
Except Tommen.
Well, Tommen's a baby. Tommen's he's a child. I mean, yeah, he's not, but he is. He didn't ever think he was going to be king. I mean, the kid loved playing with his cat more than, like, anything else in the world. So, of course, he's not gonna, like, see through Cersei. He becomes a pawn. That's all he is. They're trying to make him not one, but, I mean, and I think that the first step in him becoming a pawn, sort of, was not ordering all of his men to attack the Faith Militia. Like, that had to be it. That was, like, his first sort of, like, no, I think people will be mad if I, like, cause bloodshed in the streets. Like,
see, I thought that was just cowardice. I thought he realized that if he attacks the Faith Militant and they're surrounding him, he's going to be in grave danger.
Mm-hmm. That's probably it.
Danger.
Yeah.
So I think he just backed down because he was scared to do it. And I tweeted this at the time, and I never thought I would have this sentiment. But this is when you need Joffrey.
I was about to say that. It's the biggest departure. This is how you know Tommen is nowhere near Joffrey.
Right.
Like, this is how you know they are completely separate entities. And Joffrey actually would have gotten shit done. Granted,
Yeah.
he wouldn't have wanted Loras out of prison. He wouldn't have given a shit whether or not Loras was in prison. But if it had been anybody else, like, if it had been someone he cared about, maybe, but Joffrey really didn't care about anybody. But.
No, but what Joffrey would have seen immediately is that the Faith Militant have a comparable level of power to him.
Yeah.
And he would have shut that down right away.
Absolutely.
Like,
he would never have let it get to this point.
No, and he would have probably had some words for Cersei for allowing it to get to this point. And he would have, first of all, he wouldn't have waded out to the streets himself like a fool.
No, he would have sent someone.
No, he would have sent his entire Kingsguard and the City Watch to basically either get the Faith Militant to yield or to kill every last one of them. And that's what was needed in this case. Like, that's the kingly course of action, because what Cersei has done is incredibly dangerous and irresponsible and needs to be shut down right away before it gains more power.
I know.
And Tommen just doesn't have the stomach to do any of that. And that's his fatal flaw.
He wasn't primed. He was never primed for it.
Right, yeah, he's not prepared.
Nope, and I honestly never would have thought ever we need Joffrey ever. But you're right. I mean, it's gross to think about, But really, Joffrey would have gotten this. He would have nipped this in the bud.
Yes.
Yeah. That's oh god. Yeah, but at least we get to see Elena Tyrell again.
Yes. Our Lady of Thorns.
Lady of Thorns. I'm really excited for that.
Me too.
Marjorie, she's the one that can sort of calm the storm, or make it worse. She's gonna make it worse. But
yeah, she loves her brother, and she's been playing nice with Tommen, but this is gonna get worse.
Yep. It is. And worse for who is the question. Everyone. And I'm sure Elena's gonna come back and be like, yeah, y'all need to throw Cersei into the cells and never let her out. She's gonna be like, enough. You guys are crazy. You are the king, Tommen. And Marjorie, you are the queen. You guys have the most power. Do something about it. Yeah.
But they can't because Mace Tyrell is on a boat with Meryn Trant.
Yep. But once Meryn Trant gets killed, they're gonna have it golden. They're gonna be kosher.
Yeah, but that's happening over at Bravos.
Yeah, but they get word. I'm sure that, you know how fast word travels and freaking, like, God, I don't even know.
but the question is, how long is Loras going to survive whatever the Fifth Militant are doing to him?
That's true. That's a good question.
There's some immediacy required here.
Please don't kill off Finn Jones. I love looking at him. I saw him in person and I fainted. I was also really exhausted, but I think my body was just like, that's too much for you to handle. And like, I just fell to the ground. These are, oh, thank you. I'm super not proud of that. Thank you, Finn Jones. Okay, anyway, that's enough of King's Landing, I think. We're gonna move to the north. We are gonna go up north because it's time to talk about Stannis and Jon and Melisandre and Selyse. So, Selyse and Stannis have a and they have all S names. I'm like, come on, guys, couldn't you have done anything like a little different to make it a little easier for us, please? Sure. Anyway, I guess Selyse with a C. It doesn't matter. It's still close. Okay. Stannis and Selyse have a conversation about Jon Snow, in which he sort of says that he admires the guy. I mean, and how can you not? He's really stepped into his own as Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. But more importantly, when Selyse says that she should have given Stannis a son, he disagrees and says that it's not her fault, right? And then Melisandre shows up and ruins everything, like she tends to do. But she doesn't, and Stannis is sort of like, I need you, and she's like, yeah, you do. You know, of course you do. But she doesn't stop with Stannis. She moves on to Jon, who has been busy writing letters to outlying areas asking for men. Especially, he asks Lord Bolton, which is a huge step in his character, I think, to reach out to Roose Bolton, who is the one that killed his family, and say, yo, I need men for the Night's Watch. Help me out. Right? I thought that was a great little scene. And so Melisandre shows up, and I guess, for me, I wasn't really sure of the point of her stripping down. And just, you know.
Well, I think a very subtle change happened in this episode, which is that Melisandre is suddenly much more interested in Jon than she is in Stannis.
This is perfect. That's my goes into my theory of the week. So okay. It's good. I totally agree though, and we can rip that apart. I'm really excited because I was glad that you picked up on that as well. Yeah,
but it all makes sense in that light, right? That suddenly Melisandre has changed her allegiances in a way that was never said out loud, but in her actions and just the way she was behaving, you can tell now. Jon is the person that she's interested in.
Absolutely. And I loved that she said, you know nothing, Jon Snow. I got chills. And that smirk that she gives him at the end, like, she knows what she just said. She knows. And he knows, too. He's like, wow, God, what do I do? Who is this woman? Why is she interested in me? Please leave me alone. Like, I don't love you, I love her. Like, you know, all that stuff. Yeah. So that's really all I had to say about Jon. I don't know if you have anything else to say. But I mean, I do have more to say, but it's later on. So we'll continue on the wall. And we finally got a scene between Stannis and Shireen. And I can just say, and I'm sure you knew it, Kyle, because obviously I was typing to you the entire time, that it reduced me to a sobbing mess on the floor.
And I said it was before you watched it. I said, Sophia, you're going to cry during this scene.
I have no shame in the fact that I was teary-eyed. 100%. Because when Shireen asks whether or not Stannis is ashamed of her, the speech that he gives is so simple, but so lovely. Right? Essentially, he's like, you were attacked by Grayscale, and instead of sending you away, like, I forced you to get better. Like, I had people come in and heal you, because you are my daughter. You are the Princess Shireen of House Baratheon. And, like, and that's what matters. Family first. That is a very Tully thing, if I do say so myself. But I feel like if you weren't on Stannis' side before this episode, you gotta be now.
But that was exactly, I think, what the point of that scene was.
Me too.
Which is, we need a good guy.
We need a sympathetic hero.
Yes. And Stannis, to this point, hasn't done a lot of sympathetic things.
No.
And quite honestly, if you're not a book reader, there's been no reason to root for Stannis.
None. I mean, he killed Renly. He didn't. Yeah. It's my belief he didn't kill Renly, but for all intents and purposes, he did kill Renly, right? And it's a huge Brienne thing. Brienne's like, Stannis has got to die, and so that's also a hard one, because you're like, oh, Brienne or Stannis, Brienne or Stannis. But now it's like, Stannis. Look at him. Yeah. He has a heart. The man, he loves his daughter. He will do anything to protect her. And we saw, a little bit of that in Season 2. We kind of lost it in Seasons 3 and 4, but here we are again in Season 5, and it comes back around. He has a heart.
Yes, and also that scene coupled with Baelish, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Oh, we will.
Telling Sansa that he is the best military commander in all the land. Mm-hmm. I think, was Game of Thrones using this episode to establish that Stannis is the good guy.
Yeah.
And that it's okay in the way that Robb Stark was in the early seasons.
Oh God, don't
Again, I'm trying to hurt you.
And that's why I'm stressed out now. Because for the longest time it was me, Stannis, he's got really nothing but Stannis because he won't die. But now it's like, they've made him a character that you can see eye to eye with finally. A little bit. It's sort of gotten there, right? He's gonna have to do more to make you really be solidified with him. But, like, now he's the sympathetic hero. He's the one that we want. He's the one we're gonna root for. And it's nerve-wracking. It's terrifying.
Yes.
Because everyone that has been in that boat so far is gone.
That's right. It also goes back to him not really punishing Jon for killing Mance Rayder before the flames could get him. Like, that's kind of a departure for Stannis, who's like very legalistic, and like his whole thing is justice, and he obviously cutting off Davos's fingers, even though Davos saved him and all that. Like, for Stannis to like sort of shrug that off, the fact that Jon spoiled the Lady of Light's ritual, it's like well, we're getting a different Stannis this season.
We really are.
And that's for a reason. And like you, I'm worried that reason is so that his death will land.
God, like, it's just so stressful. It's so stressful. I never thought, I was just like, Stannis, he's not that lovable, whatever. Now he's lovable. Like, people are going to talk about that speech. They're going to talk about how that was the most heartwarming moment probably of this season. Like, they're going to, like, Stannis, the Manus, who has been so cold and calculating, who is the best military leader, obviously, he has a weak spot. I'm also worried that now he's got a weak spot, she's gonna die. It's not just him I'm worried for, it's Shireen as well.
Oh, me too. I think that there's a very reasonable chance that Shireen bites the dust this season. Again, like, I've been unmoored by Barristan's death, so now
everybody can die now. You're just like, anybody's, it's all on the table.
I can see anyone dying now. Like, if they can kill Barristan, they can kill anybody.
Yeah.
Which, I guess is the, like, book readers, like, that was the point they got to with the Red Wedding, where it's like, if they can kill Robb, they can kill anybody. And
they can kill Catelyn, they can kill anybody.
Oh, yeah, right. Well,
Nope, that's it.
I won't comment on that. But yeah, I mean, they can kill basically the entire Stark family. They can kill anybody.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah.
But yeah, now it's like, this is where it hits home to me. It's like, wow, anyone can die. And now it's a different level because the show is killing people that the books didn't kill.
Welcome to my life, Kyle. Remember Jojen Reed? I do. Vividly. Vividly remember that. Vividly remember how he's still alive in Book 5.
You ride for Jojen. There's no doubt about it.
Ride for Jojen. Honestly, I'm back to Stannis, so we can just wrap it up a little bit. I'm so glad that it's not just my attraction to Stephen Delane as an actor. Like Stannis actually has good qualities. Because I have been saying it's been weird. I'm very attracted to him. So I'm just really glad that it's not just that. Like, he actually...
Yes.
Like, it's not just me. It's other people.
It's good for your own personal sanity.
It is. It really is. Because I don't know what to do with myself, honestly. I'm like, Sophia, who are you? Who are you? All I know is that if Stephen Delane is married, she's the very lucky lady. Or man, I'm not really sure about Stephen Delane's personal life, so we won't get into that. I'm just not writing anything off.
We better move on.
Anyway, yes, let's please move on. Talking myself into a hole here. Alright, so in the crypts of Winterfell, Sansa is busy sort of staring at her Aunt Lyanna's statue. And this is sort of where she and Peter discuss not outright R plus L equals J. Rather, Peter tells Sansa the story that I explained in the second ever episode of this, the tourney at Harrenhal, Rhaegar choosing Lyanna over Elia Martell, his wife, etc., etc. And then Peter tells Sansa that he's leaving to go back to King's Landing. And Kyle, I'm going to leave the rest to you, as it was your theory this week that actually proved to be true, that I didn't mention last week. I'm sorry, I never got around to it, but...
Yes, so the background on my theory is that I laid this out for you in advance to recording that week's podcast,
yes.
But you and Blair had so much to talk about it.
I didn't have so much to talk about. It was Blair that had so much to talk about.
Wow, throwing Blair under the bus.
Absolutely, Blair. I hope you can hear me right now. She can. She's in her room. She knows.
She knows what she did.
She's thinking
about it right now. She's in her room just thinking about it.
She's like, I bet Kyle's really fast at this.
Well, so my theory, which again, as you have clarified, I laid out after last week's episode.
You did.
So it was that Baelish this whole time is playing Roose Bolton, and who he's really allied with is Stannis. And what he's doing is putting Sansa in a position of power by having her marry into the Bolton family, so that when Stannis conquers the Boltons, she is already in a position where she can be elevated to rule the North, essentially.
Wardeness of the North.
Yeah, Wardeness, I didn't know that term at the time, but that's the term.
It is the term they used.
It's the term they used, and so thus it is canon.
Yes.
But that's exactly what I said, that she now... Because she will be, presumably, if all goes well for Stannis the Manus...
Fingers crossed here, people. Fingers crossed.
Yes. But she'll be the widow of Roose's heir. When Stannis takes over the North and elevates her, the North will always rally behind a Stark.
Mm-hmm.
And it won't be just like she rode into town and is like, hey, guess what, I'm back. You know, she'll have some status for being associated with the Boltons, but she's still a Stark, so the North won't hate her.
Right.
And so Stannis, she's the unifying force that Stannis needs, because it's impossible to conquer the North, right? Stannis could take Winterfell fine, but the North is so enormous, it's just impossible for him to conquer it, so he needs to rule it. And the only way he can rule it is to have a Stark.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
so he's gonna get Sansa on his team and use her to rule the North as he marches south. And that was a theory I laid out, and it's pretty much exactly what I said.
It really is. You really nailed it. You nailed it. I wish I had somehow... I think I sort of mentioned a little bit of it in the podcast last week, but it was so long that I just couldn't... I was like, I can't. It'll be another extra 15 minutes that I just can't afford to have. But you really did nail it, and I think that's gonna... I hope that's what's gonna happen. I hope that Stannis marches on Winterfell and takes down the vampire Roose Bolton. Which is the strangest theory I've ever read. So one thing I will say is that Littlefinger telling Sansa that Ramsay has fallen for her has to be an outright lie. I just don't believe that Ramsay could love anything. I don't think that Ramsay is a human, pretty much. I think he is literally like a psychopath. So I'm a little worried for her being left behind, but at the same time, I think that Peter leaving her behind is going to do wonders for her character development.
I am actually more worried about Ramsay's stable of women.
Yes.
Than Ramsay himself. I think Ramsay, as cruel and inhumane as he is,
the one human thing about him is that he always wanted to be a Bolton, right? Like when he was Ramsay Snow, he really deeply resented not being a Bolton. Mm-hmm. And when he got that, he was genuinely happy with it. Of course, he went right back to hunting and flaying people, but, baby steps.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
So I'm not saying that Ramsay is in any way becoming more human. There's no progression on his part. But I have to imagine that from his perspective, marrying a Stark, the oldest daughter of the Starks, the last surviving Stark as far as they know, is an enormous status symbol for him. Like, this idea that he is now, like, the heir of the North, essentially, and that he's marrying one of the most famous, like, and well-respected ladies in all the land, who also happens to be beautiful and refined and, like, sort of everything that he would have dreamed about. I feel like that will, at least for a time, keep him in check. But it will also infuriate the women that he's currently sleeping with.
Yeah.
And so those are who I'm worried about in the immediate moment.
Yeah, you know what? You've got a very good point. And we sort of flashed on them in, not this week's episode, but last week. I think that was them, when Sansa is introduced to Ramsay, and then we see the girls that are glaring. So I think you're right. They're definitely not letting us forget about them. But I hope, and this is where maybe Theon could come into play again. Who knows, but maybe he could sort of realize that these girls are not, safe or trustworthy, and perhaps he's going to show up and do something that makes him not reek anymore. Who knows? It's all guessature, I guess, at this point. But I think that you could definitely be right, potentially. You know what? Ramsay being a Bolton is a very important thing. It's the most important thing to him. And he needs to keep that.
Yes, and so if he screws this thing up with Sansa, like that's it for him. That's
Roose is taking his skin, man.
Yeah, right. Like this is Roose's like big chance to unify the North behind him. He knows his hold is tenuous, and as cruel a person as Roose is, he's also very cunning and understands the game, and knows how important Sansa is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also. But of course, Littlefinger is one step ahead of him, I suspect, and so we'll see how that plays out.
Hell yeah, we will. Okay, so now we've finally made it. We've come to the end of the episode. It's time to talk about Meereen. And Kyle, given I'm gonna make you do it too. Given the fact that you're my resident Dany expert, I feel like it's only fair for you to sort of take us through what went down.
Well, I mean, you know that I'm embedded in Meereen.
Right? I do. I'm fully aware. You're there. You probably watched this happen.
I wasn't the guest on last week's episode because Dany didn't appear in the episode. So
exactly. That's why I didn't have you on, obviously.
I had nothing to report.
Phew, thank God. Oh, man.
This week I did. So, basically, there's a very nice scene, simpler times, where Barristan, as if we needed more of the R plus L equals J theory.
This was so embedded. If R plus L equals J wasn't canon, it is now.
Yeah, it basically is. Because we get Barristan waxing poetic about Rhaegar Targaryen.
We really do.
It's like the 5th time Rhaegar's been brought up in this episode. A character who died prior to the events of the show.
And hasn't really been mentioned since.
It's mentioned like 5 times in this episode, and suddenly like Melisandre is really interested in Jon. It's like,
guys, I wonder what you're doing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So anyway, Barristan tells Dany about that. Dany's very happy. She sees his daughter Zolorak again, who is trying in vain to get the fighting pits. He, of course, has a point, that Dany is just simply too hard-headed to understand, which is that if you want to have cultural unity, you can't just demand it. You need to make concessions, and the fighting pits are a relatively low-risk concession. Mm-hmm. Dany is deaf to that argument, and so it leads directly into the most violence in the streets that we've seen thus far, which is that the prostitute who facilitated the murder of the unlucky Unsullied a couple episodes back is back at it again, facilitating the murder of many Unsullied. And another Dany mistake is that the Unsullied are definitely the best fighters in the land.
Apparently not.
You know what's not effective in tight spaces? giant spears.
Yeah.
Giant spears are not great when you're fighting in an alley. That's when you need knives and short swords.
And that's exactly what the Sons of the Harpy have.
Yes, and so even though the Unsullied are the best fighters in the entire world of Game of Thrones, they are bested by a ragtag group of mask-wearing, terrorists, essentially. Yep. Because the Unsullied are not trained to fight in close quarters in city streets. They're trained to fight on the battlefield. And so they are very easily bested by the sheer numbers, and again, by having the wrong weapons for the task. So it causes a commotion in the streets. The Unsullied are being slaughtered. There's a giant fight. Sir Barristan, who was just out on a leisurely stroll, unfortunately, hears the bells ringing.
Why?
And being the greatest knight in all the land that he is, cannot resist a fight.
Nope.
Shows up in the alley right as Grey Worm, our dear friend Grey Worm, is about to be killed. Barristan chops down about 9 people, because of course he does. We needed to see Barristan in
Goes
action.
down swinging, man.
Yeah, I call him Barristan Rambo, because he went in, he just boated up the river and shot everybody.
He did.
Unfortunately, this isn't a fairy tale, and things go badly for heroes. And as soon as he got hamstrung, which is something that way back in season 1, the duel between Bronn and the when he was in
the Eyrie?
The Eyrie? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the move that you know it's the guy's about to die.
Yeah.
When he gets chopped in the back of the legs and he can't walk anymore. I was like, oh no.
That was the moment where your heart sank.
It's like, oh no. And then he takes a clearly mortal wound in the chest, and I was like, oh my god.
I can't honestly even imagine what was going through your head at this point, Kyle.
Just red flashing lights of panic.
Yes.
And then he's about to get Cat Starked right in front of the camera.
Rude! Oh god.
Grey Worm saves us that moment by killing this Harpy who was about to slit his throat. But as far as I know, they both fall over dead. Rewatching that scene, I think Grey Worm is dead as well. I think,
really?
The way...
You just want someone else to share the death.
I just can't imagine only losing Barristan. Might as well just pile up the sadness. But just the way he fell,
mm-hmm.
My first reaction is Barristan is definitely dead, and I think Grey Worm is dead.
I wanted to believe Barristan wasn't dead. I was holding out all the way through the credits, and then literally the next time on Game of Thrones shows up, and it's his dead body on a pyre, and I was like, all right. Okay, then. Yeah. That's not happening. He's dead. He's dead. Yeah.
So whether Grey Worm survives or not, I mean, he's going to be seriously incapacitated. He's no longer going to be a warrior.
No.
Basically. He's been wounded critically, and recovery time will not be swift. Barristan's dead. We know he's dead. The actor's doing interviews. I mean, he's gone.
Rest in peace, Barristan Selmy.
R.I.P. Barristan the Bold.
And we're gonna really get into his death in the showdown, because I think that's where it's gonna be best felt, because we are both book readers. So for now, that's the overview. We can close up the overview. Good job on Marine there, Kyle. I know it was hard for you.
Thank you.
Overall, I thought this episode had highlights. It had lowlights, just like hair, But now I'm gonna move on to not Davos talk, because he was not in the episode. But we're just gonna skip right over it.
Sure.
And now it's time for this week's fan theory, and the basis of this one comes from the YouTube channel Ideas of Ice and Fire, and I sort of took, I agreed with parts of it, and then I created my own theory from it. So, and Kyle, I'm pretty sure you and I have the same one. So, and it features everyone's favorite or not favorite Red Lady, Melisandre, and her true intentions for the realm. And the idea is that while she says she's all for Stannis being the one true king and Azor Ahai reincarnate, she's just using him to make her power stronger. It's my belief that she actually thinks Jon Snow is Azor Ahai, hence her showing up to him in this episode. We all know she's powerful, but given the fact that Stannis is starting to show some shred of humanity, he's not as righteous anymore. He said to her, I need you. And you don't, Azor Ahai wouldn't say that. right? On the other hand, we've got Jon, who has really stepped into his role as Lord Commander. He knows where he's supposed to be, and he knows his power, the power that he wields over the rest of it. He killed Janos Slynt in the last episode, or 2 episodes ago. No, whatever. He killed Janos Slynt. He beheaded him. And he says no to Melisandre, which is something that Stannis was never able to do. And she even mentions she's more powerful on the wall. I think this is in the books, actually, in her one point of view chapter. She's more powerful on the wall than she ever was at Dragonstone. So, yeah, Kyle, I'm interested to hear your thoughts. You were definitely talking about it a little bit earlier, so...
Well, what power is Melisandre? King's blood.
Yes.
And she is more powerful now than ever, and she's been with Stannis for a long time. So whose King's blood is powering her? And I think the answer is pretty clear.
Yeah.
This episode didn't flat out say it, but I thought it was as clear as all the other subtext of the episode, what this episode said.
Yes.
And, yeah. So, I think it's spot on that Jon Snow is the chosen one, and Melisandre knows it, and she's trying to basically ingratiate herself to him, and be with him as, she knows that he's the one who's going to do all this stuff, and,
right.
and that Stannis is a fake, basically, and she incorrectly identified Stannis as the person to throw her lot in with, and now she wants to change allegiances, but she is a politically savvy person, and
right. She's got to do it subtly.
Yes, well, like that scene when she's when she very aggressively flirts with Jon Snow, we'll call it that.
Flirting, it was some mental heavy petting, in my opinion.
Yeah, some heavy petting with Jon Snow, and Jon says Stannis wouldn't like this, and she very flippantly says, "Let's just not tell him." Or something,
right.
Better not tell him.
She's like, well, he doesn't have to know. He's like, excuse you, you've literally thrown in with Stannis. He has to know. Like, he's the king, according to you. You have been preaching this the entire time, and now you just want to say, nah, never mind.
Yeah. Peace, Stannis.
Yeah, like...
go take Winterfell, whatever.
Yeah, have fun with that.
Yeah, I think her plan... I think trying to decipher Melisandre's thinking is obviously a losing effort, but I think her idea is to bring Jon with them to Winterfell, for Stannis to die in the fighting, possibly by her own betrayal, and for her to crown Jon King of the North.
Yeah.
Like, I think she now wants to... She realizes Jon is the king. That she wants to... that she's there to assist. And she... will do all in her power to get Jon to go with them, because he can't be the king when he's a watcher on the wall. So her first attempt at that was to try to get him to break his vows again.
Right. Absolutely.
To sort of loosen him from his honor.
Which she fails at. Ha-ha.
Just barely.
Suck it. Yeah, he was thinking we were all just like, no, Jon, no. Don't you dare. Don't you do that. You know. Like, if you go down that road, you're never coming back. Like, and so does she. Yeah. So I definitely think that we're both in the same boat. I hope that other people are, but I'm interested to hear other people's opinions. So obviously, if y'all have any ideas, let us know. And now I think, unless you have anything else to say on the theory, I think we can move on to the showdown. And there's really no question as to what we need to talk about, and I'm sure you listeners have already heard from upset book readers that Barristan Selmy is very much alive in the books. But it's time to piece apart why I, and Kyle as well, I'm sure, as book readers, believe he's better off alive than dead. And I think this, let's start out with the obvious here. I think... honestly, for me, and you kind of changed my mind on this, but I thought the lack of high-quality swordsmanship that was supposed to come with the Unsullied was ridiculous. I was like, these guys are supposed to be the best trained fighters. They are trained in every scenario. They feel pain and they don't cry out. And I just thought it was sort of ridiculous that they got cut down so easily. Yes, it was a small space, but at the same time, there were high ceilings. They could twirl their things above and hurt people. It just took no time for the Sons of the Harpy to just literally wipe them out. And Grey Worm was the only one standing. I just couldn't.
So you're advocating the twirly strategy?
Yes, I am. It worked before.
I mean, you just think about it, though, how they were trained. Like,
Yeah.
their entire life has been training. They were trained in open fields. Like, they are a fighting force that has been trained for war. They have not been trained to be Rent-A-Cop security guards.
Right.
And that's
true.
what they are. And when you're a Rent-A-Cop, it's very different than being a Navy SEAL. And maybe a Navy SEAL wouldn't make the best Rent-A-Cop because they wouldn't be trained for it. And it's like, that's the idea. They are so overqualified for the job that they're doing, and they're so out of their element. It was just like last week we saw with Dario. Grey Worm didn't have the first clue what he was looking for. He had no idea how to identify that the son of the Harpy was hiding in that house. Like, or that was 2 weeks ago. But they're not trained for this. They are trained in a very single-minded fashion to participate in war. Mm-hmm. And this isn't war. This is terrorism. And it's just such a different skill set that I thought it was interesting to see them so vulnerable. But to me, it made sense. They're just not qualified for this, and Danny doesn't understand that.
I get it. I do. I'm just saying, they're supposed to be the best soldiers in the world, right? I mean, the best army ever. And they sort of came off like chumps.
Yeah, they did.
And I'm just like, come on, you guys. And I still come back to Grey Worm was the only one left standing. I'm like, why were you? What? I mean, obviously he's a main character, and I'm glad at least, like, his helmet came off, which is something that's legit in battle. Like, that's nice. But still, it was just like, alright, come on. Like, they got cut down so fast. And just like, and the Sons of the Harpy completely took control of them and advantage of them. And then Barristan comes in and cuts down 9. And you're right, you can definitely see the different types of fighting styles. But to me, it was just like, okay, I think they cut a few corners in there. Just like a few corners were cut. That's sort of where I see the show making a mistake, and my biggest thing was that they killed off Barristan. I'm just upset about that. I was like, come on, guys. And now we can sort of get into where it differs from the books, and this is a pretty spoiler-heavy, or book-heavy spoilers, so if you guys don't want to hear it, tune out. But Kyle, he's alive. Barristan really takes control in the latter book. And it's only in book 5, right? I believe. Danny goes, she leaves Marine. She leaves, and Barristan is the one that it falls into Barristan's lap to control what's going down in Marine. And he becomes this incredible sort of leader that doesn't really know what he's doing, but is trying.
Yeah, and that was when I fell in love with Barristan.
Yes.
Like, seeing him, this honorable man who's trying to do good, so out of his element, playing the politics game, playing the Game of Thrones, basically, but making a good faith effort to try.
Yeah.
And also compromising his beliefs just enough so that he stays alive. Like that's always what gets you on this show, is when someone follows their heart, they almost always die.
Right.
And Barristan very much wanted to respect the king, but he also recognized that his loyalty is to the queen, and that there's a very high chance that the king is operating not in her best interests.
Right.
And he sort of he participates in what is essentially a revolt from the inside, and plays a crucial role in that, and gets to be an incredible action hero for one scene that occurs in a bedroom, which is one of the great scenes of book 5 in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. So good.
I mean, it was Barristan's just, like, crazy. Like, the moment in this episode was good when he killed all the Sons of the Harpy, but that moment was legendary. And then, Barristan succeeds. And the revolt succeeds. And it's like, this guy who has no experience at all playing the game, who's been a sword his whole life.
And who hasn't even been in this part of the world. Like, he's totally alien! He's a complete alien, and he shows up and is like, no, I got this. I don't know if I got this, but I got this.
It's incredible. I mean, it's just, like, that arc to me was so much fun, and I enjoyed it so much. And like, that to me, that was the payoff for Marine, which is him and the poor Dornish guy, who's not in the show as of yet, at least.
I don't even know who you're talking about.
The Dornish prince who comes over.
Oh, yes. Yeah, Frog.
Frog. Yeah, we'll call him Frog.
We'll call him Frog. Yeah.
But the frog who makes his way over on this long journey, just pulling one of the dumbest moves in the history of written
media.
Yes.
But, like, though between those two, that kind of made all the Marine stuff worth it for me.
It did. It absolutely, it was like, okay, all of this stuff was so slow and laggy and just like Danny did not know what to do. Finally, all we needed was Danny to leave and Barristan to take over. Like, that's what we needed, and we get it in the books, and I truly believed it was going to happen in the show.
Me too. I thought that was one of the things we were leading up to.
Me too.
And so, for Barristan to die now, it just really hurts my feelings.
You feel betrayed, Kyle. You feel betrayed.
It hurts me on a selfish level because I wanted to see that. I wanted to see Barristan save the day and come off like a knight in shining armor.
Yep.
I didn't want to see him die in the streets. That's probably the last thing I wanted.
Yes.
I also understand, though, that the way the politics unfolded in that whole event was way too complicated for a TV show, and it occurred over way too long of a time frame, and it was completely unrealistic that it would go down in that manner.
Yeah.
I guess I was hoping that they would simplify it, but they are simplifying it. Unfortunately, they simplified out my favorite character.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But I still think it's going to happen in the general sense. It's just going to be Tyristan and
Tyristan. Oh, you wish. You wish.
I'm trying to transition from Barristan being my favorite character to Tyrion being my favorite character because I can already see where this is headed.
Yes,
and so
absolutely.
I think it's going to be Tyrion and Jorah who are the participants, and I think it's going to be Jorah who gets the hero's moment.
I think so
as
too.
Opposed to Barristan.
Because you see Jorah in the trailer for season 5. You see him in the fighting pits. You see him twirling it out just like Barristan did, you know? Like, and so I agree. I think that they killed off Barristan to make room for Jorah and Tyrion. And I love that. I just wish we could have seen, you know, all three of them. And Varys, who will somehow catch up, I hope.
Yeah, where is Varys?
I don't know. I really hope he comes back. I hope he just, like, huffs and puffs his way to Marine. Is like, it's okay, guys, I'm here. I made it. I'm here. I made it. I don't know how, but I'm here. Yeah. Honestly, you know, I think you sent me the article on the actors sort of, like, the actor saying, like, how he felt about the death. And essentially they told him, like, your character is done. Like, there's nothing more for you. And I just wanted to scream lies. I was like, lies, you're lying. There's so much more that you can do. But they've got to carve out characters for the interest of the rest of the fans that do not read the books.
Yes. I selfishly wish they would have carved out the Sand Snakes.
Me too.
Because they don't exist in the books. I don't know why they added those characters.
I mean, they exist, but they're barely there.
Yeah, right. But, either way, I mean, it's a choice they made. They're very good. They have a very high batting average when it comes to making choices like this.
Yes.
I definitely am in the boat where I'm going to trust them until they don't deserve my trust.
They came close.
Yes. It just hurts. That's all I'm saying.
It really
just
does.
hurts to lose Barristan.
It does. And I honestly think this is the first time I've disagreed with their deviation from A Song of Ice and Fire. Like, so far I've seen why, and, like, I do see why, but I just don't think it's gonna be better because they killed him off. Like, I'm just sad. Because I really wanted to see Barristan have those glorious moments that he does in Book 5, and it's just like, just come back to us. Please.
My thoughts exactly.
Yes. All right. So there we go. The showdown. I think for the showdown, I think A Song of Ice and Fire sort of still has won out for both of us. And now it's time for the beard rating. And I really think there's only one way this can go, and I think you and I are probably on the same page about it. For me, and I think we're going to give it the same beard. That's what I mean. I don't know necessarily where that falls on the rankings, but for me, this episode took a slight dip just because of the Sand Snakes, because of Barristan's death. But I'm still going to give it a rating of Barristan's beard, because there's no question. I think that's an 8 or an 8.5.
Well, I'm giving it a rating of Barristan's beard, too, of course, and I will not assign it a rating. I refuse to give it a numerical rating.
Me too.
Barristan's beard stands alone.
That's where I was going to go. I just wasn't sure. Yeah, it's just Barristan's beard. This episode was Barristan's beard. That's all we need to say about it, really. And then that's it for the episode. You know, I'm going to miss him. I'm heartbroken, but I hope that this will fuel Danny's fire a little bit. That's all I can hope. And if you guys were as heartbroken as both Kyle and I are, let us know. Kyle, where can they find you?
People can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Loves TV. I live tweet a lot of TV shows, including Game of Thrones. and they can read both of our writing online at www.tvbinges.com. Right now, voting is open for the official binge of May. We're choosing comedies, and so Community's on there, Parks and Rec, Friends, a variety of other shows.
The Office, I'm pretty sure. I should know this. I'm on the social media team, I should know this.
The Office and How I Met Your Mother.
Yes, there they are. There they are.
And so, you can vote on what show we're going to spend all day watching the last Sunday of May, and then watch with us on Twitter and have a great time.
It'll be fun.
TVBinges.com is where people can go for that.
And as always, you can reach me via email at yougotgotpodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter at yougotgotpod. And if you so choose, you can follow my personal Twitter at Sophia M. Porter. Kyle, thank you so much for being here. I know it was a rough one. And I've finally come up with a slogan, so you all can rest easy now. I don't have to struggle through it anymore. Until next week, everyone, and remember, the night is dark and full of Davos.